Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the St. Louis Java Users Group September 2024 edition. For those who don't know, the St. Louis Java Users Group is an informal group. Our first meeting was May of 1997. Attendance is free. There's no formal membership list. Our normal meeting date is the second Thursday of each month, except December when there is no meeting. There's just too many things going on over the holidays for us to organize a meeting in December. If you're joining us in person, you can show up here at 6 p.m. and we have social and pizza at 6 o'clock. And we aim to try to get the meeting started at about 6:30 p.m. This recording and meeting is taking place in the Object Computing Incorporated training room. We're at 12,140 Woodcrest Executive Drive, Suite 310, and of course that's in St. Louis, Missouri. I'd like to introduce the other members of the St. Louis Java Users Group. So from left to right on that picture, we've got Zach Klein, Ted Doyle, Robert Levitt, Wei Chi Gao, and Bruce Alspo. That's me there at the end. You can reach all of us on the steering committee if you send us an email at the bottom of your screen, and we've changed that now to a Google group. It's javasigsc@googlegroups.com. Okay. The St. Louis Java Users Group would not be possible without the support of our sponsors. So Object Computing Incorporated is our original founding sponsor, and they've saved us many times. They've sponsored the pizza here tonight, and of course they provide the training room and a lot of the logistics, and they've been with us since 1997. So thank you very much. If you're looking for a Java position or have a position that you would like to fill, you can contact Tech Systems, and they were here the other night. A couple months ago to sponsor the food. And at the end of this meeting, we will be raffling 2 JetBrains licenses and 2 Manning ebooks of your choice. But I have to remind people that you do have to be present to win. So if you're watching the recording, you're too late. This will be after the Q&A from tonight's presentation. We have some other announcements. Manning has given us a 40% discount code, good for pretty much any of their products, and you just use that code JUG13 when you check out. We have a conference coming up here tonight, and that's not tonight, on October 7th. And that's being sponsored, put together by OCI. It's the Forge Software Engineering Conference, and it'll be taking place in St. Louis at the Holiday Inn here. And if you'd like to get more information about that conference, you can visit their website there at the bottom of your screen. That's forgestl.io. And there's another conference coming up here, and that's the Dev2Next 2024. And we also have a discount code here for that, $50 if you check out using the STL-JUG code. And you can use that barcode there at the bottom, or just go to the website there. That's dev2next.com if you'd like to find out about that. And that was Venkat who was putting that conference together, and you may remember him as one of our speakers here from not very long ago. All right. So if you want to keep up with the presentations, on October 10th, we've got Daniel Hianosa coming in, and he'll talk about next generation testing tools for Java, and that'll be next month. And to keep up with our presentation schedule, that's an easy thing to do. Just watch our Meetup group site. That's meetup.com/gatewayjug. As we schedule presentations, we will post them there. And in fact, you can go ahead and RSVP for that next meeting on the Meetup site, because it's already been posted. We often get the question, are meetings recorded? And yes, they are. And probably sometime over the weekend, I will post the recording of this meeting, if I can figure out how to do that, on my YouTube channel. And it's posted right there for the website, youtube.com/@ and my first and last name. And if you'd like to give a presentation or you're interested in sponsoring the JUG, you can email the steering committee at that same email address that I gave you before. It's javasigsc@googlegroups.com. So I'm about ready to turn things over here to Ivar. I hope I pronounced that right, or is it Ivar?
Yeah, you can use both. Ivar is probably the most.
Ivar is probably the more correct. On increased performance and developer productivity with Jakarta EE11. So welcome and have at it.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me here. Let's just get rid of this one. All right. So welcome to the St. Louis Java Users Group and the presentation called Boost Your Performance with and Developer Productivity with Jakarta 11. My name is Ivar Grimstad, and I'm the Jakarta EE Developer Advocate at Eclipse Foundation. And I wish I had known this a little bit before, because usually if you add AI to your presentation, you get more people attending, right? So I do have some AI. I'll sprinkle it with some AI towards the end if you have time for some more demos. These are my social media coordinates, so you can connect with me here during the talk. I won't answer, but I'm usually fairly active after my talk and the coming days and so. So any channel works. If you have any more elaborate questions, LinkedIn is probably the better way to go. And I run a Java user group in home in Sweden in Malmö as well. So if you're traveling in Europe, you're welcome to visit us there and speak. So Jakarta EE. I'll start with a little history, and I'll actually start the history back in 2020. It's not that long ago, but that's where kind of thing got started. We began the process of moving Java EE over to Eclipse Foundation and rename it to Jakarta EE back in 2017. But it took some while to get all these stuff, legal things in order, until we could release a Jakarta EE 9 in 2020. And we did one change there. Only one change, and that was to change the namespace. And we changed the namespace from Java X to Jakarta. And the reason why we did that was, again, the legal things, so we can involve the APIs further. And this is what most developers are coping with today. Like if you're Spring Boot developers and want to move from Spring Boot 2 to Spring Boot 3, you get into these namespace switches, because Jakarta EE is everywhere. And most frameworks and applications and library are using some of our APIs in some way or the other. So this was kind of a reminder for the industry how dependent we are on the Jakarta EE specifications. And it's a good thing that we didn't do more changes, because just imagine if we also changed the APIs and not only the namespace, because we wanted to make that bump in the road as easy as possible, the migration over that as easy as possible, so we just could do the import statements and not change APIs as well. But 2 years later, we released Jakarta EE 10, and here we did changes, a lot of changes actually. And I'll go into show them in the next slide, or in a couple of slides. But the major thing there was that we introduced a new profile in Jakarta EE 10, the Jakarta EE core profile. And now we're saying 2024, and Jakarta 11 is about to be released. We had hoped to release it before summer, but we're doing some major refactoring of the TCK. So that has dragged out a little on time. So we hope to release it in Q3 or early in Q4. So, but definitely in 2024. And Jakarta EE is all about specifications. And when we talk about specifications, there are 3 components to a specification. It's a specification document or a human readable text in a PDF or HTML that we can read that describes the technology. And then there is an API that we as developers use when we code using the specification or the API, and that is something you get from typically Maven Central. And then there is a test compatibility kit, or a TCK, which is used to verify that an implementation implements the API. And we need at least one open source implementation that is compatible. That means that it passes the TCK in order to ratify a specification as final. But there may be multiple implementations of a specification, and that's kind of the strength of Jakarta EE, is that you can swap implementations, but keeping your code as it is. And Jakarta 10 is the one that is out there today. And in Jakarta 10, we changed all the specifications that are part of the Jakarta EE 10 platform. And all the blue ones were changed from 9 to 10. So you see, it's more than half of the specifications that were updated in some way or the other between 9 and 10. And we also added one new specification called CDI Lite. And it's actually a subset of the CDI specification, which is the glue that glues everything together in Jakarta EE. And CDI Lite is a flavor of CDI that takes away the dynamic, or is able to resolve all the dynamic properties of CDI that usually is resolved at runtime, and do it at compile time, so we can compile to native images using CDI Lite. So that's where core profile come in, to enable smaller runtimes that can be compiled to native using GraphVM or other technologies like that. If we compare 10 to 11, you can see that we're continuing to update the specifications. It's about the same, half of the specifications are updated in between 10 and 11. And in this talk, I'll go through some details more than others, but I'll go through most of these in the following slides. But before we do that, I just want to show you what Jakarta EE 11, when we talk about that, is, because it's more than just a group of specification. It's actually the platform that defines these specifications. So when we talk about Jakarta 11, we talk about Jakarta 11 platform, and that is these specifications. There are more specifications under the Jakarta umbrella that aren't part of the platform, but these are the ones that are in the platform. And if we peel away the more enterprisey flavored of these specifications, we're left with what we call the Jakarta EE 11 web profile, which is a subset of the platform. And web profile, it was introduced in Java EE 6, so it has been with us for a long time. And web profile is typically for creating more traditional web applications. It has everything you need, from web UI to persistence and security and transactions and whatnot in between there. And then we have the core profile, which has peel away all the UI things and everything else, except what you need, the bare minimum to create a RESTful web service, or a microservice, if you like. And that's the core profile, and it was introduced in Jakarta EE 10. Jakarta 11 will be based on Java SE 17. So we compile the APIs to Java SE 17. So you as a developer, you have to move at least to 17. But we're making sure that the TCK tests that the implementations run on 17 and 21. So app developers can use 21 or higher as well. But we're not forcing you on 21. You can stay on 17 if you like. But if you run any older than that, sorry, but you have to upgrade to use this. We're also establishing a release cadence. You saw it's about every second year we have released, but that is more by luck or accident than actual planning. Now we're trying to establish a release cadence to release about 6 to 9 months after an LTS of Java. And if you remember, Java 21 is the latest LTS. That was released in September last year, about a year ago. And 6 to 9 months after would put us in June, July, in Q2 this year. And that was when we plan to release. We will kind of release a year after, but it is within that time frame. And who remembers the months afterwards? When we draw this timeline next year, we will say 11 was in 24 and 12 is in 26. So who cares if it was June or December? So that is how we want to do. So next LTS of Java will be Java 25, and we will release that will actually be released in 2025. So we will release Jakarta EE 12 in 2026. But we also did something new this release, and that was to introduce milestones and actually release milestones to Maven Central, so everybody could try it out as we go. And the latest milestone was released in end of May, and that's milestone 4. And all the APIs there are feature complete. All the APIs are released. So if you're using servlet or persistence or validation or any of the other APIs, they are released as final versions in Maven Central. And there is at least one compatible implementation for it. So Hibernate 7 implements Jakarta Persistent 3.1, which is a part of Jakarta 11. And all these compatible implementations has passed their component standalone TCK. So what we're waiting for now is the platform TCK to be done. As I said, we're hoping for Q3, but I think it will be Q4. We're addressing a number of cross-cutting concerns in this release. And one of them is to prune things that aren't really used that much or has been replaced by better alternatives. So managed beans is something that has been with us and served the purpose, but is replaced by better alternatives in CDI. So we're taking it away. We're not allowing optional features in the platform any longer. So these old specifications that has been optional for a while now are removed from the platform. They're still there and exist as a standalone specification. So those that are using them, don't worry, they're still going to be there. They're going to be there forever. But we're not including them in the platform. They're still being there as a Jakarta specification, but not in the platform or any of the profiles. JEP 4.11 will deprecates the security manager for removal. So we're removing all references to the security manager. It doesn't mean it's going away from the implementations yet. And you can still use it if you're using it. But we're removing the references in the specification. So when it is removed, there is nothing in the specification stating that is actually there, so we can move on. We're also embracing Java records in this release. So most of the specifications where records make sense, you can use them. Let's go through some details here and there. I'd start with the security specifications. So Jakarta Security 4.0 adds basic API to be able to handle multiple authentication mechanisms. And we're also adding an in-memory identity store, and also obviously the security manager references in security is going away. So the multiple authentication mechanisms is that if you're in your application have some sort of authentication handler that handles incoming requests, and you have a UI and you have a service, you can configure this in your application code in a standard portable way to use a form-based authentication mechanism for the UI and a JSON Web Token for the services. And while you can do this today, but you would do it in a like an environment-specific or a proprietary way, now you can do it in the application as an application developer, and it's portable between implementations. We're also, in order to support JSON Web Tokens fully, we're extracting some stuff from the microprofile JWT specification into a bridge specification, so Jakarta Security can use it as well. If we had put a dependency from security to microprofile, we would be creating circles in the dependency graph, since microprofile depends on Jakarta EE. The in-memory identity store is obviously not for production, But if you have a test environment and you want to just run it while you're commuting by on the train, if you have trains in the US, I don't know. But if you're working, going to and don't have internet, you can have your credential stores in your code like this. So it's good for testing. Also, you can have custom policies programmatically for the roles allowed. So rather than having, if you have the role-based authentication mechanism, have the role through and you let everything through, you can actually do some programmatic stuff in between there and say, hey, if it's not within working hours, you're not getting in. As an example. And the security specifications, you can find, there are 3 of them. The security API is in the security 4.0. The others are more service provider interfaces for implementers. So we as developers only actually need to care about the security 4.0. Concurrency is another interesting, because we're adding, since Java 21 we're supporting that, we're adding support for virtual threads. And we're also doing some CDI-based scheduling. But the big thing is virtual thread support. And if you think about threading in a enterprise Java or Jakarta EE and Java EE environment, we're saying to developers, don't mess with threads. Don't create your own threads. Let the application server handle it for you. Use the managed services to obtain these threads, and don't create your own, because then you'll be screwed some way or the other. So use the managed stuff. It's good. So that's why then you're safe and you can do so much threading as you like. And we're doing the same thing with virtual threads where it makes sense. So if you remember, we're compiling it to 17. And we're supporting virtual thread that came in 21. How do we do this? And there were some bright people thinking about this. And what we're going to do is we're not going to let it ripple through to the APIs. So we can still compile them to 17. They're not depending on anything in 21. But we're adding some flags where it makes sense to differ between a platform thread and a virtual thread. So in this managed executor definition, we're adding the virtual equals true or false flag. So when you do this, you will get what we call a Java SE runtime aware support for virtual threads. So if you set, you are on 21 and you set the flag true, you will get a virtual thread through this managed executor service. But if you're on 17 and set the flag, you will get a platform thread. So that's how it depends on which runtime you're on, whether you will get it or not. We were discussing whether it should throw an error or an exception or a warning or something, but we ended up with, no, just give it a platform thread. When you go to 21, you get a virtual. And concurrency, you can find more information about that here. CDI supports records and seal types. So that's one of the places where, so now you can inject a record in your classes. And moving some integration requirements. We have some CDI depends on some EJB stuff. And EJB is probably one time going away. So we're moving those integration requirements over to the platform where they actually more belong. But it's more a technicality. It doesn't affect us developers. Expression language. Java records there as well, so you can use that in your expressions. Deprecating and cleaning up. Otherwise, just sort of a maintenance release. The major number is because they're deprecating stuff and removing things. Faces are also doing a lot of stuff, a lot of small changes, not those big changes, but they're doing a lot of deprecating things, clarifications, and updates where people have requested it. And they're also adding a new UID converter, so you can just write UID in your faces templates and it will generate it for you. Servlet. That's an important specification, especially if you're on Spring Boot, because you use Servlet. It wouldn't work without Servlet. And if you're in need for some fine-grained things and interact directly with the servlet API, which you can do in a Spring application as well. For example, to allow now that you can control the status code for a redirect. Previously, it was just a standard redirect code, which is 201 or something 3, and now you can actually set a specific code if you need that in your communication with the client. All right, persistence. They're also doing a lot of stuff. And you can use Java records as embeddable types in your entities. I don't think you can have an entity as a record yet, but that's probably coming in the next step. We're also taking away the custom component model. So where you have to inject the entity manager using this custom persistent context annotation, you can now use add inject and let CDI handle it for you. So you don't have to remember that extra annotation. You can also do it programmatically. So if you don't want to have a web XML file for some reason, you can do that configuration programmatically with a nice Fluent API. And the most important change here is deprecation of the old calendar date time. So we're replacing it finally with Java time API, so you can use the local date and local times. And since there are so many people using Jakarta persistence, if you're using Spring Boot and using Hibernate, you're using persistence. And if you're using dates and timestamps and stuff in your code, we're deprecating it now. But since it's deprecated now, it means it's going to be removed at some point. So it's time to start moving over to the Java time API, which is not that new. I mean, when did it come? Was it in Java 8 or something? It's been here for a long time, but it's still the new API that nobody uses. So, but now you sooner or later have to go over to it. And there are so many convenience methods for criteria language that I couldn't fit them on a slide. So I just, you have to check the persistence page to see all the updates they're doing. Persistence was one of the specifications that did most updates in this release. Jakarta validation, or bean validation that it used to be called, we're trying to streamline the names. So you can notice here that pages, that used to be server pages or JSP, that's just Jakarta pages now. Faces used to be server faces. It's not Jakarta faces. And bean validation is now renamed to validation, so it's Jakarta validation. So we're trying to get it as simple as possible everywhere. Validation are doing one thing, and that is support for Java records. So we can now use bean validation or validation in records. It has worked before by the implementations, but now it's in the specification that it actually shall work. RESTful Web Services. This is one of the specifications we haven't been able to change the name of, because a natural thing would be to call it Jakarta REST. But they want to keep on to the RESTful Web Services because it's more precise. So it's a handful, but or mouthful, but you'll use it. It used to be called JAX-RS, but now it's Jakarta RESTful Web Services. So they're moving the Jakarta XML binding dependency, and this is sort of the optionality requirement from the platform, because they had a optional dependency, or they had a hard dependency on XML binding, even though it was optional in the specification. And when we pulled that API into the platform APIs, we got it as a transitive dependency. So we had to have them make it optional in order so we could ditch the optional things in the platform. And also remove managed bean supports. And they also have their native component model where you can inject at resource and stuff. So we want to move them over to use CDI as well. And also some convenience methods and stuff here and there. So I'll just the annotations. The only thing they do is to remove the managed bean annotation. It's not a big update. Insert is just convenient stuff. So there's one specification left that I haven't talked about yet, and that is data. And data is a new specification. And I want to talk about this one, and now we're getting into some code demos as well. So Jakarta data will standardize the repository pattern for data access. And that means, in effect, that you can write code like this. And if you're a Spring Boot developer and using Spring Data, this looks fairly familiar, right? But this is Jakarta data. So we're just copying that API and doing the same thing. So as a Jakarta developer, you can do this. But we're doing more. We're adding a Jakarta data query language, which is a subset of the Jakarta persistence query language, so that you can add like specific queries and fine-tune them with this query language, like where title, like colon title in your queries. So it's a little bit more advanced, if you like, if you want to use this kind of thing. So let's look at the code here. So I have a very simple Jakarta EE application here, and I'm using Java 22. 23 is next week, isn't it? Yeah. So next week it will be 23. So you should always stay on the latest Java version. And which version are you using? 22? 23 early access? No? 21? Yeah. 17? 11? Good. Nobody on 8 or oh, of course, there's always one. Yeah. So and I'm using the Jakarta EE 11 version. And the only thing I've added as configuration here is support for Open Liberty runtime. Yes. Okay. So we had the comment. It was interviewed with a place that was using Java 5. So you didn't take that job, I guess. Yeah. So and I'm also setting up MySQL as my database. So I have some data persisted. The application is very simple. It's a Jakarta REST application, so you can see it's the Jakarta application I'm extending, and I have a set the application path. Then it's bootstrapped as a Jakarta REST application, and I have a resource which you can see the @path says that this is a Jakarta REST resource with the greetings. And it responds to a HTTP GET request and produces application JSON. And I have another one that responds to a HTTP POST and consumes JSON. And this one, the getter here lists all greetings, and the other one adds a greeting. So if I start and you can see now it's fairly empty. So if I start this application, and I use the Liberty dev mode, so it will pick up the changes when I do them. So I don't have to restart the server every time. So it starts up fairly quickly. So it's up and running. And if I now run this one and do the GET request, it returns an empty list, which you would guess, since it returns an empty list. I haven't hardcoded it to it. And if I post something, it will return a 200, but obviously nothing is stored in the database. So let's implement that logic, and then I'll use Jakarta data. So I'll create a new greeting repository. I'll make it an interface. I'll extend the CRUD repository with that works for the greetings, and long as a primary key. And the greeting, the entity I'm storing is a Jakarta persistence entity called greeting. It has a primary key of long, and it has a name and a message. So it's a very simple entity. So I've created this one, and the next thing I have to do is to add the repository annotation. And you can see here, it is Jakarta data. but if you change the imports, it will be Spring data. So it's very easy migration back and forth between these. And I guess that since Hibernate implements Jakarta data, sometime in the future, you could probably use Jakarta data in your Spring Boot applications as well. All right, so let's use this one. So I'll inject the greeting repository. So I have a greeting repository, and rather than returning a empty list here, I'll return the greeting repository and use the find all method. And here you can see I have find all, save, find by ID, insert, update, and all the CRUD applications methods that you would expect. So I don't have to do this myself. So now I'm returning everything I find in the database. So also let's implement the storing to the database. So I'll just store it here, saved equals greeting repository save. So I'm taking the greeting that comes in as JSON. It's using JSON binding to create a object out of it. I don't need any JSON binding annotations here because as long as the JSON in matches the names of the attributes, I don't have to add. But otherwise, I could remap them if I wanted. Saving it here, and in response, I'll just write a message to myself there. Greeting saved with ID equals and save plus saved get ID and just return OK. So if I now go and do a query, there's nothing in the database because I haven't inserted anything yet. But if you see, I was in Texas yesterday, so it's howdy. But here, is it hello in St. Louis? Or do you say howdy here as well? Is it hello? Hello from Duke, and it's also Duke that I'm inserting. So you see, I have the message and name, and these matches the names of the attributes. So that's why JSON binding works. Let me see if I can go back to this one. So let's post. That was saving the file, and now I'm doing it. So it returns at 200, and I happen to insert 2 of them. Okay. So I now have 2 Dukes. Let's also insert a. Since I have 2 Duke, I need to have the Duke as well. Let's call him the Duke, like this. Insert it. So we have 2 different Dukes, and we have the Duke. And I usually take Miss Duke as well. So we're having everybody happy in the database. So we have Mrs. Duke, the Duke, and we have 2 Dukes in the database. So what if I now wanted to have only the real Duke, the Duke, and not the others? Then I would have to do some filtering, and that I can do with taking a optional greeting. Find, let me spell it correctly as well, optional. Find by name, ignore case, and then string name. So I can do this kind of domain-specific thing of creating the queries for me. And then I can add a method here that filters on name. So I cheated a little bit, so I've prepared it. So it is a get. It takes in a name in the path as a path param. This name is used in the find by name ignore case method. And then I just get the message from this one. And if it doesn't find anything, it will return not found. So if I now go to the this one, and do the filtering for the Duke, then I should get the. Oh, sorry. There we go. It says hello from the Duke. So this is how you can create queries with Jakarta data without writing it manually yourself. There is an opportunity there if you're interested in a career in open source and be a hero in the community and earn a lot of money and credit and be famous. You can create a Jakarta data implementation at Eclipse Foundation or Apache or somewhere else. It's a fairly easy specification to implement, but currently we have Open Liberty supports it, but it's so integrated in Open Liberty, so we cannot extract it properly. Hibernate implements it, but they have implemented as an annotation processor, so it's not really a proper implementation. We have some other, but that's doing a NoSQL implementation of it. So we don't really have a proper Jakarta persistence implementation of it. We are hoping to get it into Eclipse Link at Eclipse Foundation or a project adjacent to Eclipse Link, but we would like to see one at Apache as well. So if you're interested, it's a easy spec to read, and it should be possible to look at the how Open Liberty does it and maybe do it standalone. We're also having some prospective specifications in Jakarta EE, one of them, and that's Jakarta MVC. And MVC is standardizing the action-based model view controller pattern. And it has been around since it was planned to be in Java EE 8, but it was pulled out in last minute, donated to the community. So I owned the IP for this one for a while before I donated it to the Eclipse Foundation, and now it's Jakarta MVC. And it's so mature that it's considered a candidate for inclusion. We actually voted on it, but we weren't voting it in this time, but it could be included in 12. And it builds on top of Jakarta REST. It has an act controller orientation that kind of signifies that this is a MVC controller and not a REST controller. And then you can actually have a void resource method, which is not allowed in Jakarta REST, but act controller allows it, and you can put the view in annotation. Or you can return a string that is the name of the view, or return the view as a class as well. So it's very flexible for how you do it. And there are multiple views supported and view engines. You can time lifts or ASCII-Doc or JSP or whatever. We support a lot of them. Jakarta NoSQL is standardized integration with NoSQL databases. It's a standalone specification. It's not done yet, so it's not a candidate for inclusion yet, but hopefully in Jakarta EE 12. A fun fact there is that Eclipse JNoSQL, which is the implementation of Jakarta NoSQL, implements Jakarta data. We have a Jakarta RPC specification that standardizes gRPC within Jakarta EE. If you know this protocol, this is something, a specification that is a little stagnant because they don't have many committers. So if you're interested in contributing to this specification and again be a hero in the community and get nice swag, join that mailing list and help them out. And it's not a goal to replace gRPC within Java in any way. It's just make it easier to use. So it should be they have a good base, and it's a fairly easy specification to do as well. So how are we on time? We're good on time. So are you interested in AI? I mean, it's kind of I don't know. Hasn't it reached its hype curve and is on its way down again? Who cares? I mean, aren't we intelligent people? We don't need this artificial thing. So I have another talk that has a lot of demos. I'm not sure if I'm going to do all these demos there, but I can do some of them. But and you had a presentation on Spring AI last week or last month. Yeah? So I'll just I'll skip the Spring AI, but I'll show a part of the Spring AI, I think. Anyway, but usually when we talk about AI, and this was the fear in the beginning of the year, is that, oh, AI, I have to learn Python. and I have to create an LLM. I have to do create a model. I have to abandon Java. It's too slow. That is not the case, because if you see that is most of us are creating enterprise applications or applications in some sort, where we have the business logic, and Java is by far the best language to do that with all the libraries and support that we have in Java. It's undefeated on the server. So these applications need to integrate with AI, and that is where I think the strength of Java lies. We don't need the stuff that happens in the AI. We communicate with it, and whether it's an AI that is trained or your data, whether it's an AI that you have written yourself, or you're just doing a public AI like ChatGPT or something, it's just another system you're calling in most cases. And in this one, I'll create a Jakarta EE application that calls OpenAI. And I'll build on this and do this going forward. So I'll just stop this one. So I have this here. I have a lot of demos, but I'll start with the Jakarta AI. And you know this. It's a Jakarta 11 Milestone 4 on Java 22. I have a couple of runtimes in addition to OpenLiberty that I showed you before. I also can run on Payara and Wi-Fi. And this application is again a RESTful endpoint, and it has a REST resource that just takes in a text, sends it to an AI, and shows the response. So if I'm going to implement this one, I have at get. This is a GET request. It produces media type. There we go. The text plain. Let's call it public string get AI. Let's take in a query param called message, a string message like this. So I have this message here, and I'll return something. So I take in a message, and I want to send this to an AI. And I've created this OpenAI client here. It doesn't do anything. It's just an empty thing. That's what I'm going to implement now. So just to make this one work, what I'm going to do is to call this OpenAI and call OpenAI with the message. So I've done my business logic. This is my business logic. I've taken a message and sent it. I mean, if you're having an airline or something, you would probably do something more for a booking, but this is kind of the business application. And then I just want to call the AI with this message. And how can I do that using just vanilla Jakarta EE? Well, most of these AI, and since I'm using OpenAI, they have this fairly good REST API, right? So it's just a REST API, like anyone. And they have this chat API. It's very good documented. It says, throw a GET request here with this header, and what model you want to use, and the message you're sending. And the response looks like this, and here's the response. So if I want to do this, I can use just plain Jakarta REST. And to do that, I need a content object that I can send over, because I don't want to build that JSON for hand. And I need a content response object that I can translate back to Java. So and I don't want you to sit there, look at me write this. So I created the template for it. So I just call it completion. That's the object that is sent over. So you can see it has the role, the content, and the content has the messages and everything. And that maps directly to this one. So it has the model, the messages, with the role and the content. So just prepare that one. It's kind of a common thing, and also have the same thing for the response. Complete in response. So this is also just a plain mapping from that JSON and in. So if I want to create the request that looks like this, so I'm using GPT-4 and the user role, I'll just create this completion object with GPT-4 user and the message that I'm getting as an input. Then I want to create a Jakarta REST client using the client builder. And when I've done that, I want to build the do the call and map the response back. I'm calling the endpoint here with a media type JSON. I'm setting the authorization header here to be my open API key that I read from my system. So this one is identical to this one. So just read the API and then do it. It's very simple. And then I'll read the content from the response. So I'm reading the entity that I'm getting from the response object. I'm mapping it with JSONB to a completion response. And I'll just navigate the response object to the content that you find down here. Of course, here I can have null pointer exception in every step. So this is not production code. So don't copy this directly into production. But you get what I'm doing. So this is kind of the thing. Create a request, call it, and you get a response back. So do you think this will work? Jakarta EE. And even clean package. Let's do the liberty run. Again. There. And it should be up and running soon. There we go. So now I'll call this. So I'm doing the calling my local service with a tell me a joke. That's a message to the AI. Let's see what it says. Okay. Why don't skeletons fight each other? Yeah. So I didn't say good jokes. I said just give me a joke, right? But this is kind of. I mean, we're all programmers. It's just code, but it's fairly verbose and a lot of things to write, and we don't like that, especially when you've seen Spring AI and how simple that can be, right? You don't want to create these RESTs and request yourself. So luckily, there is something called LangChain4j. Anybody using LangChain4j or heard of it? Yeah. So LangChain4j is probably the most mature of these immature things in this wild west of AI. It is fairly extensive and pretty good, and it works very well with Jakarta EE. So I'll show how we can replace my manual way of doing it with using LangChain4j. And to do that, I would have to add a dependency, or two actually, to LangChain4j. Let me see. There we go. So I'll add the Vaadin. I don't know why. Demo LangChain4j dependencies. There we go. So I'm using the core LangChain4j, and then I'm using LangChain for OpenAI, and that's because I'm communicating with OpenAI. But if you're using some other model, you can just use whatever and replace it with there we have lots of them. So it's a fairly big API. So just pick the one you use. And if I wanted to I can go back to my resource there, which is where I have my business logic. Just so now I have the langchain4j available for me, so I can just do langchain4j, do the OpenAI language model, which comes from langchain4j, instantiated with the API key, and then call the model generate. It's not model call or chat, it's model generate with a message and get the content. So it's much easier than this. And now I can also now get rid of this one. I don't have to implement to inject this. So my code is now, I can actually delete this client and these two classes. I don't need them anymore. Right? So now I'm just calling this stuff directly. So if I run this on, let's do another implementation, cargo run. So now I'm just switching implementation. I could have used Liberty, but just for educational purposes, that you can switch implementation with Jakarta EE without changing your code. So Pyara is a product that is initially based on Glassfish, but it has been rewritten pretty much underneath. And it's a very good product as well. So I think this is up and running now. So let's see if langchain4j can also, yeah, here's another joke you get. So this is how you would call using langchain4j. But if you remember, in Jakarta EE, we were very glad, we like the CDI way of coding. So we don't like this instantiate something within your code and stuff. We want to use dependency injection. And in order to do that with langchain4j, we have to combine CDI and langchain4j. So let's do that. So rather than I'll just stop this one. So rather than instantiating it here, I'll create a producer for it. So I'll call it OpenAI producer. And I'll give it a scope. Let's use application scope for this one. And then I'll have a method, public OpenAPI langchain model, get model. Let's say there. And then I'll do the code I have here. I'll just copy this over here and say return the model like this. And I also have to give this method a producer annotation. And here is a name conflict we have in Jakarta EE. Like I have the producers Jakarta REST that's producing JSON in my REST APIs. But in CDI, it's the enterprise inject. It produces an object, an injectable object, or a bean, if you like. So I create this producer here. And then in my resource, I can now use dependency injection again and say the OpenAI language model. Let's call it just model. And then I don't need this line anymore because I can use this model directly. So it looks much nicer and better in the Jakarta EE programming model. And if I run this one, it should do the same thing. So it's starting. Let's just clean it up a little here. All right. So it's getting simpler and simpler to do this. So if I now do tell me a joke, it Yeah, it's the same joke, but I guess, but to see how easy it is to create it as a CDI object.
Looks like that content is truncated. Can it be too tired? It says it's too deep.
Yeah, that's probably the JSON binding implementation in Payara that does it. So, yeah. So let me see. Yeah, before I do the summary, you had some Spring AI here. So if I do the same thing with Spring AI, I would create a Spring Boot application, and I've used these Spring Boot Starter Web and the Spring Boot OpenAI, right? And the code would look very similar. I would have the application. That's kind of the same as the Jakarta REST application. It's a Spring Boot application. And I would have the resource, which is a REST controller in this case, since it's Spring. And I'm order wiring to inject a component. I don't need to do this, but I'll show later why I do this. So I do all the AI stuff in a separate component. And then this is my business logic. I take in the message with a request param. That's the same as a query param in Jakarta REST. The message here, I call the AI with it. And the actual AI integration is done with the chat client, which is the Spring AI. This is probably what you saw last month. So it does this call. So it does exactly the same thing. Let's just verify that it does it. So I'll go. Oh, there we go. So Dix Spring AI, Maven clean package. There we go. And Java jar target like this. So it starts like this, and if I do the same call, it'll do the same call. So if you look at the code, I mean, Spring has a very cool, easy API to use there. So wouldn't it be cool if we can use Spring AI from Jakarta EE? And actually, you can. Let's do that. If I want to use it here, what I have to do is to make it available for me through CDI, so I can inject it with CDI. So what I'm going to do is to create a Spring AI producer, same way as I did with the LangChain4j producer. So I'll create this one. I'll give it the application scoped, and I have to do a couple of things. First thing, I need the Spring context. So before I do that, I'll just add the dependency. If you want to do like I can remove the LangChain4j because I don't use it anymore, but then it wouldn't compile the stuff I have. So I'll just leave it there. And what I'm going to do is to add the dependency for my Dux Jakarta Spring AI, Dux and the version. So I know. No, it wasn't the Dux Jakarta. It was the Dux Spring AI, I think, isn't it? Dux Spring AI. There we go, and AI Dux. There we go. So now I've added the Spring Boot application as a dependency to my Jakarta application. But there is one thing you need to remember when you do that, and that is the Spring Boot plugin. A Maven plugin packages the Spring Boot application in a clever way. They do some magic. So it's not a jar you can consume directly. So I cannot package it as a Spring Boot application. So a better way would be to extract the AI stuff in a separate component and have it just as a Spring component. Then you can inject it directly and not do anything. And I've done that in my, prepared that in my in my GitHub repository, so you can look at how that looks like. If I wanted to use the Spring Boot application, because that's what I have, what I have to do is just uncomment the Spring Boot plugin, because I don't want to package it as a Spring Boot application. But since it's now not a Spring Boot application, it will fail with the tester won't be able to load the context, the Spring Boot context. So I have to take away the tests. And in order to not fail, I just have to delete or get rid of the test. And you know the best way to fix a failing test? Yeah. So then it doesn't fail any longer. So the next thing I have to do to get this to work is to clean install. Like I need to have it in my Maven repository so I can consume it from my Jakarta application. So now I've prepared everything there, and in my application now in the Spring AI producer, I'll just make sure I refresh this POM. In this producer here, I have to get the context, the Spring context, and when I have the context, I can register some beans with that context. So I'll register the Spring AI application, which is the Spring Boot application I'm getting from here. So I'm registering that application in the Spring context. And then in my producer method, I can call the Spring context, get bean, and get the Spring AI service. And this is why I split that AI stuff in a separate component. Because now I'm just injecting this Spring AI service, which is just a Spring component. And when I've done that, I can, in my this one, inject the Spring AI service model, and I can just uncomment the language chain for J, and I can use the Spring model, which now has the call method with message. So now I'm doing the same call as I did in the Spring application. I'm doing the Spring AI service call. That's what I'm doing here as well. So if I go and take this application and just Jakarta AI Maven clean package cargo run, start it again. Now, this is not necessarily something I would recommend going to your boss and saying, I want to drag in the Spring AI stuff and go to production with it. I would test it first, not uncomment the test. And while it works, it may not be the best way. So maybe the better way is to use LangChain4j or similar. But if you have to, you have to, or if you want to, strong enough, then it will work. It is perfectly fine. So if I now do tell me a joke, it now goes through Spring AI. So now I'm using Spring AI from a Jakarta EE application. So you don't have to move to Spring in order to use Spring AI if that's your driver to go to Spring. If Spring Data is your driver to go to Spring, those two you don't have to, because Jakarta Data, Spring Data, Spring AI, you can use it from Jakarta Data. So there is no reason to move to Spring because of those two things. There are other cool products out there. I'll just show the code there. Quarkus, anybody heard of Quarkus? Yeah. So Quarkus is a kind of Red Hat Spring Boot competitor, and Quarkus is very similar to Spring Boot in how you set it up. So here you just add the dependencies of the Quarkus components as you want. So here I have REST, JSONB, and LangChain4j with the Quarkus version. And Quarkus has done something cool. So in the resource is exactly the same. It uses Jakarta REST because it's implement that API, and it has to get exactly the same thing, and it calls this AI service that I've injected here, And the AI service, that would be this is where it's the equivalent of the chat service is here. You just have the register AI service annotation, and then call with the user message. So it's annotation based. It's very clear and concise what's going on here. If I wanted to configure this with other thing, I can use other annotations like such that system message and set some system stuff to the AI. So it's very clear, concise, easy to use if you're familiar with dependency injection and CDI and this kind of way of thinking. So it's a very nice thing they're doing there. There's another project called Helidon. Anybody heard of that? So Helidon is Oracle's response to Quarkus and Spring Boot. And Helidon is also it's the latest version 4.0. It implements Jakarta EE core profile, so it is compatible with all the APIs. It is rebuilt from scratch on Java 21 with virtual threads, so it's extremely fast, and it has the same kind of developer experience as Quarkus has. And in this one, they also have you can do the same things. Since this is Jakarta EE, this is exactly the same code as I had in my Jakarta EE demo. So here I have this OpenAI producer, the Spring AI producer, and you can just play around and switch between them as much as you like. All of them works. So this works exactly the same as Jakarta EE. Yes, we have a question. Yeah, no, yes and no. Yeah, it could be a response to that as well, but yeah. So those are all ways of doing these things with Jakarta EE. There are benefits with most of them or some of them. If I were doing any AI integration today and I was on using Spring, I would use the Spring AI. It's very good. If it's not good enough, or if it has some stuff you not cannot do everything, I'd probably go with the LangChain4j, which is the more mature library out there, if you can say anything is mature of these. So LangChain4j is a good option, no matter which platform you're on. And it integrates well with CDI associated. It is easy to create a producer like this. So Jakarta EE 9 did the namespace change. We have some tooling there. Is there anybody who are on Spring Boot 2 still and are going to move to the 3? Or have some issues with the namespace? Or had some issues with the namespace? Yes. So there were some tools that we created with the Jakarta EE 9 for bytecode transformation. And this is the Eclipse transformer and the Apache Tomcat migration tools. And these tools will take your jars or wars or application, whether they're Spring applications or Jakarta applications, and transform the bytecode for you. So if you have a transitive dependency somewhere down in your dependency tree that you don't have the source code for, and it's on the Java namespace, you can use these transformer tools to transform them to the Jakarta namespace. Some runtimes even do this, have these tools incorporated into them. So if you run on Wildfly, for example, you can deploy a JavaX or Jakarta namespace application. It doesn't matter; it will just transform it for you. And OpenLiberty does the same thing. So some of them built in, but there are also command line tools or CI tools that you can run. These are equally good. These two tools. Jakarta EE 10, a lot of changes. The current version, Jakarta EE 11, also under development, coming soon. So while Jakarta EE 9 had a namespace, 10 had the core profile, 11 will have Java 21 and records and Jakarta data and some other stuff. Increasing the developer productivity and performance, I hope, because it's less code to write. It's easier, less error prone. It's on Java SE 17, but compiled to 21 or run on 21. So you can use 21. I use 22 in all the demos there, so it works with that as well. If you want to learn about Jakarta EE, you can use this course I've made on LinkedIn. You have to have a LinkedIn Learning account. If you, some states have, you can get it on the library card. I don't know if is that here in Missouri, in Columbus. Columbus, they have the library card. So move to Columbus, and then you can get it for free. Or if you're in Missouri and don't get it for free, you can connect with me on LinkedIn, and I can give you a free link to it. And if you want to learn more about Jakarta EE, you go to jakarta.ee. That's where you kind of start with everything. You can also go directly to start jakarta.ee. We have a starter there and some starter guides, so you can generate projects. So all the projects I showed here today were generated from that starter, and then massaged a little bit to the later versions. I write a weekly hashtag Jakarta EE, and the source code for those 2 demos I showed are on my GitHub. And I'll give you the slides afterwards. I'll send them to Bruce, and he will publish them. And also I'll put them on SpeakerRec on Twitter. So with that, I thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed it, and thank you for having me.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions for our speaker here tonight?
Yes?
We're kind of watching the Q&A part, if any have come in. I had a couple of questions.
Yeah, we have a question there.
Oh.
Yeah.
You could repeat it. I remember a time when IBM WebSphere and Oracle WebLogic and JBoss and Tomcat are the main players in this space. How has the community changed since that time?
So how has the community changed with, and you're talking about the vendors implemented Jakarta EE. So those you mentioned there, like Oracle, IBM, Red Hat, they're all still there. They have their project. Tommy is also there. They're a member. Pyara is there. We have a company called Omnifish that have an implementer, or they support Glassfish. We also have a couple of Chinese companies that are distributing their versions of Glassfish. So the number of projects are fairly as those you mentioned, and we have this on Jakarta EE webpage. You can see compatible products page where all of them are listed. But it's not like it was, if you think of the good old days in J2EE, where we had like 20 application servers. It's not like that anymore, but it's more consolidated now. Yeah. By the way, you earned a cap as since you asked the question. I have one more.
I was going to ask, do you have support for GraphQL, LDAP, and can you work well with Kotlin?
So do we have, yeah, I don't have to repeat it since you said it in the microphone. So yes, you can work with Kotlin. We have a Norwegian speaker actually that has done a couple of talks doing Jakarta EE with Kotlin. So it's not our primary, we're targeting Java, but Kotlin is on JVM, so it works. Probably it has some quirks here and there, but you can do it. It's like everything in this industry. If you can do it, we do it. And that's why we have so much problems. That's why we're never on time with any project, right? Because we do all the things we can. Yeah. So yes, you can. The other one, LDAP, yes, we have support for that. GraphQL, we don't have that directly, but there is a project in MicroProfile for GraphQL that is not part of MicroProfile. It's kind of a standalone specification in MicroProfile. So that one supports GraphQL, so you could add that. And most of the vendors that implement Jakarta EE also implement this one.
Very good. Any other questions?
You don't get a second one.
I just remember this. what is the relationship between Jakarta EE and the Java module system?
Okay, so what is the relationship between Jakarta EE and the Java module system? So we add module info definitions in all our API jars, but that's how far we go. Since we're running in application servers, they have their own module systems. So Glassfish is on OSGI, for example. Wildfly is on JBoss modules. IBM has its own stuff. So I don't think any of them wants to introduce a second module system. And there is really no real needed as when you think of the platform. But since we have added it in APIs, it actually fits with if you're using on the module path in your applications and using the API standalone, you should be fine.
How is Jakarta data going to help with the same functions working in conjunction with Spring Data?
Okay, so how is Jakarta data going? Is the question how we're going to work if you have both of them in the same application, or is it if so? Jakarta data currently we have had people from VMware or other Spring team that has helped with the Jakarta data specification. So they're all on board with this, and I mean, I would like to see sometime in the future maybe Jakarta data is a specification that is picked up or implemented by Spring data and extended with the functionality they have, so the APIs are the same. That would be the ideal way. If you have an application where you're using both of them, I mean, it's probably something in the same lines of yes, you can do it, but you probably shouldn't.
Okay, if that's all the questions then, thank you very much. I think we generally give our speaker a round of applause here. All right, so we can end the recording now.
I still have one of these, and I'm not taking it home.